Today, we're completely dismantling that huge modern myth. You know the one, the myth of overnight success. We're going to do this by looking at the incredible, completely unseen life of just one man. We always get so caught up in those flashy highlight reels of achievement, right? We completely ignore the quiet, uncelebrated grind that actually makes greatness possible. So let's dive into a story that is going to fundamentally shift how we think about dedication, legacy, and true discipline. Success isn't built in one day. It's built by showing up on the days when nobody is watching. Okay, let that sink in for a second. In a world that is just utterly obsessed with instant gratification and going viral, we tend to completely forget the silent foundation that true achievement actually requires. This is the story of Benjamin. He was a man whose name almost nobody knew, yet his daily actions literally kept a whole world turning. Section 1. The invisible routine. So, imagine this really old town, and it depended entirely on this giant clock tower right in its center. Every single hour, its bells would echo through the streets. The townspeople used it for everything, to wake up, open their shops, catch trains, get to school, meet up with loved ones. It was essentially the beating heart of their entire daily lives. And yet, almost nobody in that town ever stopped to wonder who actually kept it running. 42. Now, the sheer weight of this number is just absolutely staggering. For 42 years, an entire town depended on Benjamin every single day, and they didn't even realize it. I mean, he did this invisible work day in and day out for over 4 decades with literally zero applause. Let's walk through his morning because it brilliantly illustrates his grueling, uncelebrated grind. Every single morning, long before anyone else was awake, he'd unlock this heavy wooden door at exactly 4:45 a.m. He'd climb 312 narrow steps in the pitch dark. He'd clean those giant gears, add fresh oil, adjust the heavy pendulum, and check every single bolt by hand. And get this, he only allowed his actual day to begin after every single one of those mechanisms was absolutely perfect. Section 2. The true meaning of integrity. Things shift a bit here when we look at Benjamin's interactions with other people, which really highlights the massive gap between what we expect today in terms of recognition and what true, quiet dedication actually looks like. We're looking at two vastly different mindsets here, doing it for applause versus doing it for the clock. One afternoon, a tourist visiting the town asked Benjamin a question that makes total sense to us today, right? He asks, "Why work so hard? Nobody even knows your name." This tourist was just completely baffled by the concept of working incredibly hard without getting any fame or public credit for it. Benjamin just politely but very firmly dismissed the guy's laughter with a simple philosophy. They don't need to know my name. They only need to trust the clock. To him, real responsibility meant doing excellent work just for the sake of the responsibility itself, not for a pat on the back. So eventually, this young mechanic named Ethan joins Benjamin as an apprentice. Now, Ethan was expecting exciting, dynamic work, but instead, Benjamin spends hours teaching him the tiniest little details, like how to hear if a spring was just slightly loose, or how to spot problems before they turned into massive failures. Ethan gets super impatient with the tedium. He complains nobody would notice if we skipped a few steps. And Benjamin looks right at him and drops this absolute mic drop response. Exactly. That's why we never skip them. He absolutely refused to cut corners just because no one was watching. Okay, this builds to a crazy climax on a freezing winter morning where his preparation is brutally tested. A massive snowstorm blocks the tower entrance. Naturally, most people wisely stayed in their nice warm beds. But at 4 a.m., Benjamin is up. By 4:30 a.m., he's marching 6 kilometers through deep snow. At 5:30 a.m., he arrives. His hands are completely freezing, his boots are soaked right through to the bone, and he climbs every single one of those 312 steps. And at 6 a.m., the town clock rang exactly on time. He didn't miss a beat. Nobody celebrated, nobody even had a clue what it cost him. But as he stood shivering in that freezing tower, he smiled. He understood this core lesson perfectly. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one notices. The town down below remained completely oblivious to his sacrifice, but Benjamin's internal standard was met, and honestly, that was all that mattered. Section 3. When the system works. Fast forward decades later, and the inevitable finally happens. Benjamin's unbelievable 4-decade streak is physically broken. He gets seriously ill. For the very first time in over 40 years, he can't make the climb, forcing his young apprentice Ethan to take the reins entirely. When Benjamin finally recovers from his illness, he doesn't ask Ethan how hard it was or if people missed him. He asks Ethan this exact question. Did the town notice? Ethan smiles and answers, no. And Benjamin simply nods and says, good, the system worked. This is such a great reveal because it perfectly shows how Benjamin's obsessive focus on teaching Ethan all those tiny, frustrating details totally paid off. Because he transferred his standard of excellence to the next generation, the clock and his legacy never stopped, even when he did. Section 4, a legacy of consistency. Moving into the later years of his life, a reporter finally interviews him, which brings Benjamin's quiet daily philosophy to the masses. When asked for the secret to his incredible success, his response was just so simple. I never focused on 42 years. I focused on today. Tomorrow, I would do the same again. This interview ended up inspiring thousands because it so beautifully demystifies success. It emphasizes that true discipline isn't about pulling off some massive heroic effort. It's literally just repeating the right action, day after day, long after that initial excitement disappears. When Benjamin finally retired, the whole town gathered beneath the clock tower. For the first time in his life, they enthusiastically applauded the man behind the clock. The mayor unveiled this beautiful bronze plaque reading, "Time served us, because one man served time." Benjamin stood there and gave a quiet smile. But knowing his character, he wasn't smiling because of the applause. He was smiling because he knew that at that exact moment, Ethan was climbing those 312 steps to keep the tradition alive. Section 5. Your internal clock. Okay, so what does this all mean for us? Let's break down the framework of Benjamin's success so you can actively apply it to your own life and your own goals. Benjamin firmly believed the most important clock isn't hanging in a town square, it's inside you. Every decision, every habit, every promise you keep, these are the gears of your life. They are constantly moving the hands of your future forward, whether anyone is watching you or not. So forget the Hollywood fantasy of overnight success. The reality is invisible effort. Greatness isn't created by one extraordinary cinematic moment. It's created by thousands of ordinary moments repeated with excellence. Look, maybe nobody notices your effort today. Actually, maybe your progress feels completely invisible right now. The lesson here is to keep showing up and keep improving anyway. The core takeaway of this entire explainer is right here. Your consistency will become your legacy. What you do today when absolutely no one is watching is exactly what you will be remembered for tomorrow. Discipline changes lives. That is the truth Benjamin lived by for 42 years, and it's the exact same truth that can transform your journey today. I want to leave you with a provocative final thought to carry with you as we wrap up this explainer. Are you actively building your future by what you consistently do today? Or are you just hoping you'll magically arrive there tomorrow?